Okay, I have made quite a few developments, various things with this plan, and I want to try to convey all of that to you as quickly as I can in this film. It's going to be kind of long, and there's going to be some notes you may want to take along the way. I had begun the work just to work out some details with this corner where we can't, regardless of variance allowances, we're not going to be wanting to build our structure over this boundary line, over this property line here. And these were a couple of the plans that we left off with in Design Review 4, which was B and C, C adding a couple more feet onto it. So since we were already in trouble, I reverted to B to begin my work with this phase of it. Once I had worked with this corner and felt I'd arrived at something that possibly we could live with, then I worked some with rotating this because I wanted to explore a few things with it. And so don't get too caught up in that, because along the way of once I rotate this, I do a lot of work with where we're going to have stairs down to grade from this structure. And so, at the end, I wasn't overly pleased with rotating this. I didn't think that the advantages were that great, and I reverted to this, leaving this foundation where it is. So don't get too caught up, particularly in the ugliness of this rotated shed structure, but pay attention to the other. There's a lot of other things that are covered in the film besides that little rotation, which was just experimental on my part, and there's not going to be a charge for horsing around with that. So for all of this work, we're going to be working with this, I think it was 23'8" deep addition 1129B. So that's renamed 1208A. And that depth does not change through this film at all. Where all of this is decking on the outside. And if we come in here and we can see where this property line is and the extent to which we're over it with this particular plan, we have to be back to there with any kind of encroachment. And this was just the first quick solution to that, and we'll talk quite a bit more about this, but this was the first quick solution to that issue of building over the property line. Where this is your decking, and you still have quite a bit of room to get around there. And this is what it looks like around here. I'm not overly crazy about this. It's the first quick approach, and this still allowed you 32 inches between the cable rail and the corner of that bigger column. There is the part that's into his property if we wanted to just build it like it was shown, and obviously that's not an option. And so starting from this same thing, and it kind of looks like this. I'll show you a quick look of it. And because I wasn't crazy about that plan for a variety of reasons, namely it's kind of architecturally an error, so I began to, and plus I didn't like it built right up to the property line like this, where if push came to shove, they could put a fence right up to this. So I began to work with a little bit more of just trying to see what else might be done. And I began by pushing that fireplace back to the extent I could, where the support beam comes in close to the front of its face here. And then you can see what happens here. I just got rid of that pathway through there altogether to try to at least eliminate that erroneous clipped corner, what I felt was an erroneous clipped corner, and ended up with this, where that's all the decking there. Now that space here gets a little tighter, quite a bit tighter. It's probably only 20 inches or so. Now I can't know, of course, but I feel like we have a pretty decent chance to get a variance to build this, just because of the surrounding lots up here to the east. This plan at least keeps our structures off his land, which was a requirement anyway. But it keeps all we have. This is a 3-foot setback here. I'm showing them varying that by 3 feet to allow us to build our permanent structures over here, and then these deck structures are still approaching that property line pretty tight. And then this is what this one looks like. These stairs could be eliminated. I'm just showing them, and then this could be just a platform, but it's about 30 inches here, so you would almost need a railing. It's a close call. You could probably build up that land where you didn't need a railing, but it would still be a 30-inch platform from there. And this is a quick look from the outside with the rotation. And then I really didn't like this situation where this was coming out and crossing over that. So I began to work with that, pulled it back that far anyway. I ended up pulling it back even further, but also figuring that at least adjust the textures or whatever on this deck up here to be more in harmony with what's happening on the first floor. But then you could see where I pull that all the way in where it makes more sense. So you end up with something like this with the dimensions in here. Yeah, this is the 21 foot 8 deep addition here, and I have this pulled back where that stone stops at the edge of the concrete. Now there's quite a bit of room on this deck here, and if you wanted to trim some of this decking back you probably could, but there's quite a bit of room here to do whatever you want. It's not covered space. And then once I made those few adjustments here, I wanted to come back to this corner because I really didn't like that you couldn't even walk through here with a lawnmower if you had it without being on their property. So I came back here and I looked first at, I don't know if you can see that, but I pulled this deck all the way back where it's engaging with where the railing for the deck is engaging with that column there, just to see if we left this part, that 21 foot, whatever it is, 8 long, can we get some space for a person to travel through here. And these stairs obviously don't have to be there, but when we do this we get a little more space, 2'6", but I could not make this look right from outside where it engages here, and you see some of this wall, it just looks really clunky. And so at the end, this was the absolute best I could do with leaving that the 21 foot 8 deep, the patio portion, and then just having this deck, and I have it here. There's only 5 or 6, 10 inches between the column and the cable rail, and there's this 3 foot setback, and I'm just using that as a pathway. If you had 3 foot to get through there, it would be nice. And I suppose the best thing is if that guy would convey you some property over there. I don't know what the rigmarole involved with that is, but I have to say I don't like this approaching the property line like this. I'm sure the variance people won't like it, but I don't think they'll have a choice really to give us the same thing that 3 or 4 neighbors on the right or the east have. So this was the best I could do, leaving that the full depth. So as I said, I don't know what the chances are that we get this. I think that this are encouraging in that vein. Certainly this one's over the line or very close right up to it, and this one's probably within 3 feet and 4 or 5 feet. We are going to be coming right up to that with this last iteration. We're going to be coming up within 20 inches of it with this deck corner here, 3 feet here. I think they would give that to us. Obviously the most ideal thing would be for you to negotiate 3 or 4 foot wide easement all the way through here, so that this becomes a more perfect kind of structure and lot. Given the likelihood of that happening, I've just pushed forward with this, but I stopped in the middle of the film just to take a quick look at pulling it back a little bit. Does that help us at all? And so I began with the bar, which we had 12 feet long for 1 extra seat than what you had planned. So I began by first of all reducing that to the 7 or 8 seats or whatever it is by 2 feet, and then pulling the whole structure back an additional 2 feet, 1 truss space. And it helps us. Obviously that's going to help you some with your clearance, but when you look at the property line, the orange property line, it's not that big of an improvement. So we went from 1'9" to 2'3", and then from 3 foot to about 4'2" to the corner of the foundational structure, with this stuff remaining the same. But I just did that right now during this film, and I did not do it for the rest of the film. We're just going to be reverting to the 23'7" deep structure for all of the looks, 1208D. And this is what that finally looked like when I got that pulled back to there, and I still didn't think that was really enough. So I began to look at these columns. These are kind of expensive columns. I think they're at least $1,500 a piece. They're made of a composite, but those were just what I had gone in with at the start. I don't even think they're the best for it. And so this is the most basic, just a cased column here, and then this one's just your typical columns that are a lot less expensive, or column wraps that are a lot less expensive. And so from here forward I work with these columns and that 23-foot deep structure. But once I made these smaller columns, I pulled this margin in, and I don't have the series of photos for you to see that, but you could see out here, it's out near the edge of this back side of the chimney, and here I've pulled it in to where the only thing to this side of that slab is the margin board around the deck. So we're a lot closer to that column. It probably helps us a little bit more on our clearance down through here. Nothing was happening with that extra foot or so up there. So that is what I did there to end up. And from here forward in the film, this is the corner that we're going to be working with, 23 foot deep from here to the edge of this, and then another 3'7". And here's a short film of what that detail looks like a little better up close. And here's where you see that move coming in an additional foot. And this was trying to come in where those cable railings here were just engaged with this last column, and there was just no way to make that look sensible. So that was abandoned, and we reverted to this. So for the rest of this film then, we're using this 21-foot 8-inch pad with a 3'7". And this arrangement at the corner, I haven't horsed around with that any further than there. Now, as I warned you, part of this film is kind of irrelevant because it was just something I was doing on my own, and it was rotating and rebuilding that shed with a different roof, a low pitch roof. And I wanted to work with that for a number of reasons, but once I rotated, then I get into looking at how we get stairs down to grade at various points. As I said, it's going to be hard to ignore that shed, but just try to pay attention to what I'm doing with the stairs. When I moved this shed like this, we had this up here, so I knew that we could have stairs back there if we wanted. And I'm really just trying to think of how you're going to use the property down here, this land that's down here, and this land that's over here. Is there going to be fire pit here, and how do we want to, what's the quickest way or the most efficient way create stairs to those areas down on the ground that you're going to be wanting to use and integrate with whatever's happening up on that elevated area. And so looking at stairs, again, regardless of what shed structure is there, looking at stairs, we had originally talked about them coming down off the center like this. I wasn't crazy about that. I do think they need to be pretty wide, so I widened them out a little bit like this. And now you have stairs down here to this area and stairs down here to this area. With those ones obviously optional. With any of these, you could actually just have one set of stairs somewhere from this structure down to the ground. So that was the final look of what I did with the bar for the moment. Next, I wondered if those stairs wouldn't be better just turned like this. I think there's one less stair going down when we turn them. I actually adjust the land to make it one less stair to grade, so it's one or the other. Reducing it by one step does eliminate that extra newel post in the center of this railing. And there's the property line, essentially. And I was just trying to consider how you were mostly going to use all of this land that's down here in constructing these stairs. Here's a quick film using this fence as the boundary line to give you an idea of what it's like through here. This was the final thing of what I did with that bar. When I relocated this shed, I made it a little wider. Yours is 12'4", and I made this 14 foot deep, and I left it the same length. But I quickly thought that that was a little too deep, so I brought it back to, this is the identical size, identical footprint of your existing shed here. So I put it back to the 12'4" wide. And then those were the possibilities coming down the back side if you thought this was going to be a pretty busy path through here. I just wanted to see if that was going to be possible to bring that back. Because that was the existing one. It's possible to do the same thing here, have stairs down behind that existing structure. And this gives you that total access to this area down here. But one of these stairs is probably superfluous. Again, I was just messing around with this, seeing what could be done. There is the original shed as it exists now in its existing location. And my original idea with rotating this was that I was thinking, well, maybe the bar is pushed back against this. I mean, the kitchen's pushed back against the wall of this shed here, and then the bar is out here, but it's uncovered, and so that didn't seem to make sense. Which is, so I wasn't sure that we were going to be justifying the expense of rebuilding this in a whole different configuration, whether that was working or not. But here's a film of that as shown. Continuing with a little bit of stair work, and I was still thought that I might be able to make this work better than the other shed at this point. So I was continuing to work with these stairs on my own, and which ones could be eliminated in this plan, and how could they be alternatively located. So these were just some different looks of these various stairs with this structure. I almost kind of prefer that. I mean, without this one, it's nice, but it's not really needed. And that's pretty decent, but I don't know why. I mean, a person has to come all the way over to here to get down here. But maybe most of the traffic is under the cover. And so it makes most sense to have the stairs here. I do think it makes more, if we're going to have them centered, I think it makes more sense to just have them coming down at this angle rather than coming down, approaching toward the property line that way. And this is okay, but I don't know, I think if I was going to do that, I would just do that. There's that existing shed though, if we leave that where it is. So yes, the idea had been to flip this bar and kitchen and put them out here and then put this big table under here. But I think you're probably more apt to use it like this than that. So this does provide a nice big movie backdrop though, if someone wanted a nice big flat building across the back there. But here I should note or I want to note that up here on this deck, that had been pretty small as it was, so it is possible to just cantilever that beam over this column here, cantilever that beam that distance there, and have that go out as far as that, which begins to approach the roof on the shed structure, but does not on this. One thing I did with this, though I don't think it's shown here, is if the shed were used, I slide it up there a couple feet, the same size shed, and then we eliminate that column completely there. And this is actually the best arrangement using this shed in my estimation. Maybe these stairs go this way and the other set goes down here, I don't know. But note here that what happens is this beam now runs from the wall of the addition and integrates with the north wall of that shed structure and provides us completely open space through here without that column. So shown here, this is about 15 feet, the decking from here against the building, but I wasn't really sure about this little thing here, so I did a quick little where I just pushed that shed even further out like that, and then there was one or two stairs going down with the ones behind that shed optional, and this was a quick look at this sort of thing. But again, it's out in the rain, and so I really wasn't sure, and that was the original approach. Thought maybe this whole thing is integrated into this shed structure, which is also a possibility, but I really didn't think that was going to be working as well for you as this. So I reverted to this as a kind of floor plan use approach, and then we went back to the original shed structure, just rebuilding its foundation and doing what we have to do to make that sound. And so you have something like this then, and you can see the deck shifts back a little bit on the east margin, and the column comes back to the upper deck. It stays that bigger size, but the column does come back in place, and I don't have a problem with this one either. Maybe that all looks a little bit more smooth. But this is kind of cool here too, keeping that historic kind of location of that old shed. So the next couple sections of this are all just based upon us reverting to this situation here. One thing in particular I like about this is that it's a lot more open at this end here. So there's more sunlight, more air, more view. And there's so much space up on that deck, regardless of what the structure is. There's a lot of room to move your furniture, add furniture. You could have awfully big card parties up in this area here. These stairs down, wherever there are going to be more than 3 or 4 risers, they're going to need handrails down as well, so that'll have to be considered. Now I have not modeled it probably because it didn't really occur to me until now, but another thing that you could do to improve your clearances through here and to help our chances at the and to help your chances with any variance sort of thing is maybe this whole pathway isn't needed here, and this wall could be brought up north another 3 feet. This railing could be brought up north another 3 feet and wrap around here where there's just the margin board and the railing, and then these stairs are up at this end the same way. But it still is, nothing's going to get us back. We're going to need a variance one way or another, and if you think this is valuable here, then you may as well just leave it in. This next section is just viewed from this southwest corner. The various changes that some of which I've already covered with you. You can see the beam supporting that upper deck here, integrating with the shed. Let me go back to this, which I like. And stairs, which way you're going to put them. I put corner boards here. This here is either painted hardy or pre-finished hardy or something like this, all these accents, these skirt boards, the risers, all of that. You can use less expensive treatments, obviously. And all along I've been showing these railings probably a little higher than they need to be for one thing, but with no top rail beyond this cable here. In the maximum spacing, I just quickly looked, and the maximum spacing I saw was 7 feet, which is what I'm limiting my spans to, and that's when there's some sort of like a spacer or whatever that's in here. But I would think that you would want some sort of top rail on that, and so I'm showing it here where this is just like a 1 inch by 6 inch top rail that runs on top of all these 4x4s. This is a fairly inexpensive approach, I would think, for railings, depending on what those cable railings cost. But you could have any sort of railing you want through there, traditional balusters, etc. This is putting like a finish on those. Some of these railing manufacturers actually sell all of these balusters. There's special hardware to attach the 1x6, and this is, you can't really see it in this photo, but they do have some nice finishes. But this is supposed to be showing that in mahogany, not black. And there is room underneath that structure here that you could put a couple gates on that and have storage under there. And so, as shown, these are like 5.5 foot high gates or doors, and there's that 3 or 4 feet deep in there. But it's not going to be dry space. It's because it's under this deck. But you could store things that can get wet under there if you wanted to. And from the end. From this side here you can see that the finish on these a little bit better. Not that that's what I prefer, but here the deck up here on the second floor, regardless of whether it's a smaller size or the larger one as shown, probably you're going to want to just make these railings consistent with what's happening down here. Here's a quick rotation of what it's like up inside this structure. And when I was making that walkthrough, it occurred to me that as much blank wall as you have on the east, perhaps you could have added some more glass at this end. But that whole idea was quickly scuttled when I looked at this. And we have a support for that beam coming right down through here for one thing. And there's just no decent way I could think to do anything at all to improve that wall. So that was that. But I did want to look at this door briefly. And so far I've been showing there's a 9-foot wide door, and as you know, we need a beam above that to carry the end of this beam here that comes through. But you have plenty of height up here that you can practically make this as wide as you want. But I made it 12 foot wide. And so far also I've been showing this as these kind of high-priced doors where you get this whole opening like this. There are quite a bit less expensive options, but even with 12 foot wide and 2 fixed panels at the end, that gives you 2 parting panels with a 6 foot wide opening clear. But these are more expensive things where they open like this and then they actually fold back against the wall. But this is 20 feet plus this way and 25, so there's a big giant room here now joining up with this. So think about that as a decision as well. Just the width of it, if not the door brand and etc. Just a few more items to cover. First of all, this table, there's a variety of these 10-seater tables, and you can see that almost any of them can be accommodated on that space, in that space pretty easily. And then secondly is with regard to this bar, frankly I'd like to see a little bit of a curve on it, and perhaps something like this. I think that doesn't really cut down your space too much, but it gives you a lot more dimension for people sitting at that bar, so they're not in a row. They can talk more directly to one another. Finally, a walkthrough from the bottom of the yard through, I believe, through this structure here, some of the final kind of updating that I did, including this bar. So that'll be it for now, and I will be in touch and we'll talk. Thanks very much.